Hi there. Welcome to In the Moment, a series of conversations about the Gurdjieff work, life, and a lot of other stuff. And this particular episode, which I'm recording on Woohoo, Monday, March 23rd, is something that occurred to me this morning as I was driving along the Hudson River in the rain towards Nyack to buy a baguette. And it's called The Third Not Understanding, or The Conscience of Being. We often speak about the way in which we don't understand something. Yet I think the most telling thing we don't understand is the way in which our lack of understanding is comprehensive. In the average moment of day-to-day life, when we say we don't understand something, it has something to do with some factoid, some event, something very specific and probably quite ordinary. This is more or less the first kind of not understanding. The second kind of not understanding is the one we bring to our spiritual work. It is a spiritual not understanding, tied perhaps to some metaphysical longing resident in feeling. We may claim that it's unattached, amorphous, nonspecific. But I think that the habit from our ordinary life follows its own bent, stalking us, and actually causes us to believe secretly, somewhere inside us, that not understanding is still about some specific thing. We have just transferred the thing we don't understand from the physical world to the spiritual one. It sits there as cold and hard as the same stone we had in the ordinary world. And it insists that there is some specific, perhaps even undefined, that helps it look more spiritual, thing we don't understand. That there might even be, and here enters heresy, a resolution to the fact that we don't understand. It's easy to play that game for as long as we don't see our mortality. And perhaps that's why Gurdjieff's character Beelzebub muses, at the end of his long stories about humanity, on the need for human beings to grow a new organ in them that remembers just exactly that. There is a long trajectory in life to not understanding. I remember not understanding algebra. That was the first kind of not understanding. Yet I also remember at about the same age not understanding the sky and the sea and the water. I remember sitting on the beach in Albufeira, Portugal, at the age of 14, seeing how I didn't spiritually understand the nature of the world. That was even before my hostile confrontation with algebra. At that age, and for decades and decades after that, while my conceptualization and narrative about my lack of understanding evolved and got more and more sophisticated and complicated, I somehow secretly continued to nurse the belief that there was a resolution to this problem. Yet now, having lost the rest of my original nuclear family, including the very untimely death of my sister in 2011, and having had a number of years to contemplate the feeling quality of that loss, the tendrils of my inner memory, my organic, cellular, and molecular memory of life in its wholeness, have grown much deeper into the body. And I see this question of not understanding much more comprehensively. This third not understanding relates very strongly to what Gurdjieff says about conscience to Ouspensky in Search of the Miraculous. Conscience is a state in which a man feels all at once everything that he in general feels or can feel. Gurdjieff follows this statement with a long explanation I have intentionally not bothered to quote here because I don't think it adds that much, is surprisingly negative in its views, and actually tends to obfuscate the power and essential meaning of his original sentence, which was more than enough to bring his point home. In a certain sense, everything dovetails into feeling in the end because this particular center vibrates at the highest rate in man. So when he advises us that conscience is a state in which a man feels all at once everything that he in general feels or can feel, it implies a wholeness of being that includes the whole of a man's or woman's life. Everything he or she is, the entire trajectory of life from beginning to end, from the earliest memory of birth up through childhood and into the present moment. The feeling of conscience binds all of these apparently independent and disparate elements which represent individual points of life into a whole creature, in the same way that our organic sensation comprehends the deeply interwoven nature of our molecular being as a whole and single thing. And in the end, this makes perfect sense, because if unity is the aim of the work, the unity must be comprehensive. It must include everything. The conventional understanding of the word comprehensive. And it must also grasp it, the root meaning of the word. You can see from this that inner unity has, by inference or experience, take your pick, a certain quality of actually understanding, grasping the entirety of one's life, all of oneself. A conscious experience of a person's life would have to have that quality, and indeed we grow somewhat closer to it as we age. As I noted in the essay on the nature of intelligence and centers, the whole point of intelligence is a movement towards understanding through a recognition of obedience and alignment. When we come to the threshold of that inner unity, and we confront it, stand face to face with it, looking into its living eyes, perhaps at a certain age, we begin suddenly to actually understand what it means to not understand. The third not understanding exists at this point in being, where we see our whole life as a single thing. The parts that appeared to be disconnected are suddenly comprehended with all three centers. All the moments in life are one single thing, not disconnected feelings, but a whole feeling that is not composed of particles, individual memories that are separated from one another and exist as distinct entities, but a wave. A movement through time and space of a single whole thing. If we begin to understand this, we see that understanding is comprehensive and that it isn't the particles we don't understand. We don't understand the wave. This is an experience that puts us in the middle of nowhere, knowing nothing. It reminds me of the original title of In Search of the Miraculous, Fragments of an Unknown Teaching. We find ourselves in the middle of fragments of an unknown life. What we do not understand is everything. Our life calls us here in this moment to help make it whole again through feeling in this moment. If this does not at once remind you of Gurdjieff's comment, use the present to repair the past and prepare the future, try to let it do so. The wholeness of life, the conscience of being, is a call to see how we live within the unknown, not to know the past as a known thing and prepare the future as something that can be known. It is, in some strange way, a koan that calls us to not understanding now, and understanding not understanding. I realize this is a reflexive comment and probably not helpful to readers, but perhaps this small essay has given you a taste of something different, and we need to have a new taste in us in order to see our life in comprehensive enough terms to come to the third, not understanding. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.